So right now, where it stands in Iceland is that the Constitution is in a bit of a constitutional purgatory. It is in this kind of low-lying drawer in the Parliament. As you saw, it hasn't been voted on yet in Parliament. It might seem like a very dismal end to the story, but in my opinion, the story is not over yet. So in 2017, they'll have a new parliamentary election, and there is a political party called the Pirate Party who are very much in favor of this new constitution. And ironically, even though they only have 3 seats in Parliament, they have the majority of support in the society. So there's a really great chance that this Pirate Party will get the majority of seats when the new election happens. So if that's the case, then this new draft comes onto the table for a proper vote. That's part of why we're doing this tour and going out to universities and having these discussions with awesome people like you guys, so that we can kind of bring some international attention to what happened in Iceland, because the whole atmosphere right now there is very dismal. You know, there's a small window for change after some kind of crisis, and in Iceland they see that window is closed. So we're trying to kind of creak it back open and see what we can help come to fruition. Myself, I just got finished with a European screening tour where we were out for about 3 months, and we went to all sorts of amazing places across Europe and had discussions about what can we extract from what happened in Iceland, how can we re-examine our role as a citizen using this new template. So it's been a very exciting time, and now we're back in the States and bringing one of the main characters, Catherine, who you saw with the plaid shirt, along with us to talk about some of the more finite details of the Constitution and how she feels now in reflection.
Okay, brilliant. Okay, I think, John, do you want to kick off with a question?
He doesn't know.
Yeah, right. Well, I mean, in the film, they made the point. Can you hear me okay?
No.
It's a little bit far from me. Maybe Mark can help?
Yeah, in the film, several people made the point that it was a small country and it worked very well in a small country. You're obviously thinking of this as being a model for what might happen in bigger countries. So, are there aspects of the process that make it difficult to apply it in a bigger country?
Yeah, that's an excellent question, actually, and that's one that is consistent no matter what region we screen the film in. That's the first one that people generally ask, so you're on point with that. One of the things that have been brought up that I've also seen people act on is to look at Iceland as possibly more of a township rather than to compare it to a whole nation changing. So we had screened the film at Duke University in Durham, North Carolina, which has a population of about 300,000, just like Iceland. And so they were looking at maybe trying to change things more locally, or using these kinds of examples of getting the citizens engaged locally. And then from that, we could use that to kind of broaden change. So maybe it would go from that small area to a state to possibly a coast to a country. And the whole idea of a constitutional change is not necessarily what every nation needs either. You know, and when we talk about this when we're in the States, we're just kind of looking at it as how people were awakened by how they were able to kind of re-examine what democracy might mean now with technology available to us. I hope that answers your question.
Okay.
Can you guys hear me okay?
It's just breaking up a little bit, but it should be okay.
Okay.
Anybody else with a question? Yes, Joe.
Hi, thanks for your documentary, your film, very interesting. Can I just ask you, what's the relation when if this constitution gets formally adopted by Parliament, what will be the relationship between the constitution and the existing body of laws? So for example, as an example, what if the constitution has proposals or clauses in relation to private property and limiting the power of private property, how will that relate to existing legislation which presumably has a bias in favour of private property? How will that work out?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. So I can't speak to the chapter on private property, but what I can recommend is that if you Google search Icelandic Constitution English, they have put the entire draft up on English as well. What I can speak to is that there are 4 main hot topic issues in the Constitution that's kind of keeping it at a standstill. These 4 issues are also why it's taken so long for Parliament to address a new constitution themselves. Before this whole citizen-written constitution came to the table. One of them is the allocation of natural resources. In Iceland, they have geothermal energy, which helps keep your heating costs very low, but it also brings in a lot of industry that's quite damaging to the natural resources. So one of the things that they're trying to do right now is create a larger tourism industry so that it pulls away some of the attraction to just bring in these aluminum smelter factories that will actually hurt the landscape quite a lot. You might see right now that Bjork, the singer, is on a crusade to try to stop this and create more national parks rather than allowing this land to be gobbled up by corporations. And this is directly addressed in the new Constitution. In the new Constitution, the wording is somewhat similar to giving the natural resources the same rights as a human being would have. So to that degree, that's kind of revolutionary in a lot of the eyes of the people that are in Parliament right now. So that's being held up. Another thing is that in Iceland, the fisheries are very coveted. Fishing is one of the largest exports in Iceland. So the quotas are harvested out to countries outside of Iceland. So some of the small fishermen actually in the nation can't fish and make money. So they're trying to bring that back to the country so that people that are actually from Iceland could own part of the quota. That's also contentious in the society because there's a lot of people making quite a lot of money that have been for many years on the system that already is in place. And then we have other things like the role of the president. In Iceland, they have the parliament, or sorry, they have a prime minister and they have a president. And the role of the president is kind of blurry. So it's kind of trying to redefine that and cap a term for them as well, so you don't have these career politicians. I hope that answered your question.
Anyone else? Linda, oh yeah, sorry. Shoot on.
Just forgot my question.
Ah!
It was a great documentary, thank you. And I suppose some of us were sitting here because we come from Ireland, and we've been told by our politicians that there's only one letter in the difference between Iceland and Ireland, and that we should feel really lucky that that was the case. So that I suppose there wasn't quite, there was certainly opposition to how the austerity crisis was happening, but not on a large scale. And I suppose I really wonder how does a parliament get away with not putting into force what has been voted on by a referendum? And this is coming from a country that holds referendums fairly regularly, but also takes them very seriously.
So right now, what we've been able to figure out why the Parliament did not vote on this or give it the attention that it was supposed to have was that the Constitutional Assembly took on more than they had originally agreed they would be addressing. So there was only supposed to be a few issues in this new Constitution that they were going to be rewriting, and instead they kind of took on the whole gamut. They said, all right, what would be the ideal situation? What kind of society do we all want to live in? What are the problems that have been plaguing us for a very long time? Let's address it all. So that was something very uncomfortable for Parliament because that was not the original agreement. Secondly, because it was not involving the Parliament, they felt, well, we weren't a part of this draft, so why would we be a part of approving it? So that was a problem. And then third, as you might have seen in the film, there was a time when the Supreme Court delegitimized the the election results. And because of that, that immediately put Swiss cheese holes in the process and made them feel, okay, this process already has faults in it, and we can't support something that the Supreme Court has taken away from us. So one might look at it like it was set up to fail to a certain degree, but there are legitimate concerns within that critique. So there's there's a constitutional committee that has been elected within Parliament itself to look at the new draft and say, okay, here's our 4 hot button issues. Could we reword what the council has done just enough to make us comfortable enough to push these 4 issues through and put those into the existing constitution? This makes a lot of people uncomfortable because this would change the wording and therefore change a lot of the intent. But this is one of the things that's happening in tandem with people trying to get this new constitution to a vote. I think you have a really important question. Why was this so easily ignored? This hasn't been so clearly addressed.
Anyone else?
Just one of the critical things that needs to happen in the Irish Constitution is to reinstitute popular initiative so that the people can raise issues to be put in a referendum and can go to a plebiscite, and if there's a majority of the population vote for it, well then that's it.
I agree. What would you say you would do in Ireland if this happened, if the Parliament decided to keep it at a standstill?
It can't happen in Ireland because the citizenry have the veto. But the problem in Ireland is that the citizens can't set the question. It's only the Parliament can set the question, but it's people who make the decision. So they couldn't stall it. But in Ireland, the problem is that we can't set the question. In Iceland, they were able to set the question, and Parliament were able to stop it. In Ireland, we can't set the question. And I think this would be for both Ireland and for Iceland. I think for Iceland, the people need to have the final say. And for Ireland, we need a constitution that says the people can set the question.
I see. So you can't even get it to the table.
Yeah.
Okay.
We could in the past, and there was one attempt to do it, and when it came to it, the government of the day had a short window, constitutional window, to change the constitution, and they removed it before the issue could be put to the people.
I see. This is kind of similar in Canada too. In Canada, it's like the snake eating its tail a little. It's very, very hard and nearly impossible to even get this proposal to the table to rewrite any of their constitution.
Yeah.
I'm hearing this more and more on this tour.
Okay, right. Anyone else? No? Any last questions? Or no? Okay.
One of the things that I'm often asked is, why is it called blueberry soup? And maybe you're wondering that too. You're waiting for blueberries to pop up in the film. Well, so I chose that name because blueberry soup is an Icelandic comfort food. And I wanted something that embraced the Icelandic community, but was also something a little bit unique and would make you feel differently than the doom and gloom of economic collapse and we're all ruined forever. I was watching a lot of things on Netflix at the time that just made my heart sink lower and lower. And I think there was something very interesting happening in Iceland that was calling upon this almost intrinsic sense of democracy. And I wondered if they could be somewhat of a taproot for us all in our own nations trying to figure out the mess that we're trying to get through and what our role might be in that. And I was very moved by what was happening there. And when I would come back to the States and talk about it, they would say, oh my gosh, they're doing that? They can do that? So I think what we have here is an extremely interesting exercise in participatory democracy. And I wonder if you all feel that way too. And if you'd like to, I know sometimes shyness gets us, and I'm definitely one of those people. So if you feel some thoughts after this that you would like to express, or something really like pulled at you from the film, feel free to go on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, any of those platforms, and you can hashtag Blueberry Soup, and I'll see it. But not only will I see it, but so will the authors of the Icelandic Constitution. They're looking for this right now, so is the Pirate Party. They're looking for your feedback and your thoughts on what they went through.
Right, we thank Eileen.